Welcome to the presentation, Fear, Uncertainty, and Doubt, Words You Don't Want to Hear During a Software Selection Process, by myself, David Goad, Managing Director of eSavvy. We're going to talk a little bit about who I am and who is eSavvy. Then we're going to set the stage in terms of European CRM selections in the current market environment. We're going to talk about why deploying a CRM European system is like a marriage. Then we're going to talk about European CRM selection and evaluation methodologies. Then I'm going to go through some pitfalls and bridges in terms of selecting European CRM systems. Then I'm going to go through how to build a real business case. We'll talk about how Microsoft does European CRM selection, and we'll talk about the Microsoft Dynamics SureStep methodology. So who am I? Well, my name is David Goad. I'm Managing Director of eSavvy. I was formerly the Regional Director for Microsoft Dynamics in APAC. I have 22 years of work experience, including project background in SAP, Oracle, Siebel, PeopleSoft, and Microsoft Dynamics. I've been involved in well over 100 business application deployments. I carry certifications in project management and operations management, combined with degrees in engineering and business. Last year, I trained 200 plus consultants on Microsoft's delivery methodology called SureStep and conducted 6 delivery audits of system integrators. Who is eSavvy? We're a specialist in Microsoft Dynamics CRM. We're a certified and managed partner. We were recently recognized for our expertise with an award from Microsoft. We've been experienced in more than 100 CRM and ERP deployments. We're leaders in the CRM deployment methodology known as SureStep, and we teach other partners in its use. And satisfied customers is our goal. In a recent independent survey, 100% of our customers indicated that they would refer us, that they were satisfied with our service, and they were likely to repurchase from us again. What is Microsoft Dynamics CRM? Well, in our opinion, it's a leader in the CRM solution space. If you don't believe us, believe the analysts Gartner and Forrester Research. They recently did studies that show that Microsoft Dynamics CRM was a leader for them in Salesforce automation, contact center and customer service software, and a leader in CRM solutions in the enterprise space. Setting the stage and establishing some of the background for European CRM selection. Well, I would suggest to you that even though the global financial crisis is over, there is still a hangover from it. It's tougher to get finance these days. Companies are slower to hire new resources, and there's a continued cautiousness around making new investments. There's also a willingness to make do with older IT systems. What's the conclusion? That even though the global financial crisis is over, we're still feeling its effects. Investment decisions in large IT projects are even more critical now than they were in the past. How is marriage the same as an ERP or CRM implementation? Well, first of all, both marriage and European CRM selections tend to be monogamous. It's costly to have more than one at a time. Unfortunately, there is, however, a fairly high failure rate. The longer the engagement before getting married, typically the higher chance of success. The selection process is based on emotion and often not logical. The option that is prettiest on the surface is not the right one, typically. But a serious statistic, of the over 1,000 ERP systems available in North America right now, the Wall Street Journal recently did a survey and found that 73% of all manufacturers are dissatisfied with their current ERP system. What's the overall conclusion? Most business application selection processes are flawed and not giving the client or the customer what they want. Some examples of different European CRM selection methodologies. So the first one I like to talk about is what I refer to as the let me see your resume option, or more commonly referred to as the tender. In this particular case, a client or a customer releases an RFP to the market or a request for tender to the market with a very prescriptive response process, and they invite various systems integrators or vendors to respond to that. The pros of this option is easy to standardize and manage. The cons are it often doesn't give the consultant enough information to effectively quote, and it assumes honesty on the part of the vendor in doing the RFP response. Option number 2 is what I refer to as I am from Missouri, show me, or more commonly known as the pilot. In this particular case, you bring in a consultancy to build part of the solution and demonstrate it. It does ensure a high degree of fit in terms of the critical functionality, but because you can't cover all the functionality, you have to assume that what worked for one part of the system can be extrapolated to the rest, and that's not always the case. Option number 3 is what I refer to as the engagement, or more commonly known as the diagnostic. You bring a consultancy in to do an evaluation, and they come out of that with a cost estimate and a detailed project plan. The pros of this is that it allows the consultant to have enough information to effectively quote the job, and it also allows the client to effectively evaluate the consultant and how they're going to work with their business. The cons is that you have to have a strong preference going into the process, because it's hard to redo for multiple different consultancies. The last option in terms of European CRM selection methodologies is what I refer to as what's good for the goose is good for the gander, more commonly known as precedence. The idea here is that you select a solution based on another division, a similar organization has selected the same solution. It's low risk from a political perspective, but it assumes that the requirements of the other divisions are identical to your requirements, which is not always the case. What's the conclusion here? That there's no one right option for choosing ERP or CRM systems, and they all inherently have flaws. So, some pitfalls and bridges in terms of software selection. First, a poll. So I asked a very simple question via LinkedIn poll. I said, what did you think the most important factor was to consider in selecting an ERP or CRM system? Obviously not a statistically significant sample, but it does present an interesting result in that a lot of people prioritize functional fit pretty heavily. The first mistake people make, too much focus on functional fit. The issue here is comparing the degree of fit between two business applications can be problematic. Let me illustrate. A quiz. What is the ideal degree of fit when evaluating a business application? Is it 50%, 75%, 90%, or it doesn't matter? What's the answer? Well, does anyone recognize this picture? It's a picture of Wilfred Federico Damasco Pareto. Anyone familiar with the Pareto principle? The concept that 20% of the requirements can generate 80% of the work? Well, that's very valid in terms of European CRM system implementations. Pareto's rule applies in this case, and that 20% of the requirements can often create 80% of the effort. So you can have two applications, two solutions that are presented to you with the same degree of fit, but a vastly different effort in terms of getting to that last 20%. The other thing you have to ask yourself is, it also depends on what that last 20% is that's missing. Is it the critical components or not the critical components? My point here is that when people do degree of fit analysis and look at the ticky boxes in terms of people filling out RFT responses, often there can be too much focus on this one number and or ticking all the boxes, and it can lead to the wrong conclusion. Common mistake number 2 when selecting ERP or CRM solutions: cost estimates based on limited information. Doing quality services estimation in ERP or CRM consulting is heavily impacted by the skill and experience of the estimator, as well as the estimation tools that they have at their disposal. But even the best estimator with the best tools can still produce a poor quality estimate if they lack information and understanding of the client's requirements or have made incorrect assumptions regarding the client's resource capabilities, their preferred project plan, and the prioritization of the project over the other business activities. It's fair to say then that the accuracy of a services estimate is proportional to the amount of information provided to and analyzed by the consultant before providing that estimate, as illustrated in the diagram to the right of this page. What's the key conclusion here? The smart customer designs a process optimized to give potential vendors maximum information and exposure to their business. Mistake number 3 in making software selections. I call this comparing apples and oranges. The issue here is not all vendor proposals are done on the same or right assumptions. Factors that may affect the cost quoted by your systems integrator may include, but not limited to, when the project will occur and how fast it will be completed, the number of phases in the delivery, how much you plan to do yourself, and the level of documentation you expect. Another serious statistic: it is estimated that approximately 90% of all ERP and CRM implementations are delivered later over budget. The likely explanation for this is that most companies don't fully understand what the vendor is proposing. The conclusion: the selection process should make sure that all quotes and proposals are delivered on the same basis. There are many non-functional factors that may impact what an SI proposes to you. Common mistake number 4, references but for what? In asking vendors for references, clients typically say that they want to see where our vendor has done a similar implementation of a like solution in the past. What clients typically fail to realize, however, is that the reference demonstrates that the company has done it before, but doesn't necessarily demonstrate that the local consultants who will be working on their project have done it before. Unless a consultancy can demonstrate multiple deployments of a similar solution in the same geographical area, then the reference is largely meaningless, in my opinion. The conclusion here: ask for the consultant's references, not the references of the consultancy. Mistake number 5, the foregone conclusion. There's a term in psychology referred to as closure. This is the case where people actually seek facts to support a decision that they've already made. The point here is that quite often European CRM selection processes start out with a bias where there's a preconceived view in terms of what the solution is going to be at the start. My point to you here is if you're going to spend a lot of money on doing an ERP or CRM selection, you need to make sure that the people who are participating in the selection process don't have any preconceptions or biases, and that the process is not biased itself. Common mistake number 6 in terms of European CRM selection is not understanding your business case before selecting a software package. If you don't understand what the business case is or where you're going to get the business value from your solution, you risk being sold to. Quite often this is known as the shiny hubcap syndrome. Basically, the buyer being enticed into buying something they don't really need just because it looks good. In fact, if you actually take sales training, sales people will be trained on various methodologies to confuse your process. Quite often these are referred to as flanking or fragmenting strategies. In the case of a flanking strategy, the salesperson actually tries to change the customer scope and requirements to fit their product. In the case of a fragmenting strategy, the salesperson tries to convince the customer to break up the requirements into pieces and then to deprioritize the pieces of the solution that don't work for their particular system. What's my point? It all comes back to you understanding what functionality and capabilities would drive benefit for your business and being able to ask the question, what features and functionality really drive value for your business? Because the conclusion is you need to have a clear set of objectives of your business application based on real business value before you start the selection process. Otherwise, you risk getting sold to and getting confused through this sales process. So, to that end, how do you build a good business case? Well, my suggestion here is you need to have a methodology. I commonly use the nucleus research methodology. That methodology is based on the concept that there's 5 key components to delivering business value. These include breadth, how many people will use the application; repeatability, how many times a day they will use it in that area; cost, how costly is the task; collaboration, will the employees need to collaborate; and knowledge, can I reuse the information I create. If you're interested in this methodology, you can find it at the link above. My conclusion here, and my comment here is, regardless of what methodology you use, you need to pick one and stick with it. My second comment about business cases is what I refer to as Dave's Law of Numbers. When developing a business case, some of my personal learnings have been that a lot of smaller numbers added together is better than a few really big numbers. My point here is the more your business case is dependent on 1 or 2 key benefits, the higher the risk of not achieving the necessary business results to the deployment. My next key learning, a small number times a bigger number is still a decent number. My point here is that a small business benefit leveraged across a large number of users can still generate a significant impact. My final key learning here is that a number bought into by the business is twice the value of a number that isn't bought into by the business. It's better to accept a smaller number than to argue with the number about the business users that need to believe in the business case. Conclusion, business cases that have benefits from multiple sources and impact across a larger number of users are usually more reliable. To benchmark or not to benchmark your business case. Benchmarks can be a useful tool for decision making, but only if they're used in the right context. What to use benchmarks for? Understanding where the benefits come from, determining what is realistic, and guiding your business. What not to use benchmarks for? Proving the capabilities of the proposed solution in your context. Your business case is going to be a bit different from someone else's business case. Setting the expectations for your business case. Conclusion, benchmarking in the right context can help you to evaluate and understand your business case. So, one methodology for selecting European CRM systems and for deploying them is what's referred to as Microsoft Dynamics SureStep. What's Microsoft Dynamics SureStep? Well, SureStep is a CRM selection and deployment methodology and a set of supporting tools developed by Microsoft. It's based on the Project Management Institute's PMBOK standards. It's in its 4th release and is designed to scale to any size of implementation. The team at eSavvy were heavily involved in its development and instruct other partners in its use. And it consists of 7 key individual offerings called the diagnostic phase or decision accelerators. And it's a proven methodology that's worked in the past and is recommended by Microsoft. Here are the example of decision accelerator offerings. Each is a self-contained offering that can be combined together in groups to address key questions that the customer has, such as what are my requirements, what's the degree of fit of your solution to my requirements, what is the system going to look like, what is it going to cost, what's the technical architecture going to look like, and what's the business case. The advantage of the SureStep decision accelerator process is it's modular and allows you to engage your systems integrator for the components that you need. What's the bottom line? According to independent analysts and Nucleus Research, companies investing in Microsoft Dynamics European CRM should engage with Microsoft partners who use Dynamics SureStep implementation methodology. SureStep enables customers to reduce risk, accelerate payback. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me a note at dgoad@esavvy.com.au. Thank you for your time today.